All right, 3, 2, 1. Let's please go ahead and wrap up those conversations. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, just to give you kind of a view into my mind, I want to fact check the information you knew about food. This is very good that you're practicing putting down what you know about food in your mind map, but what good is it if it's not right? Right? So we got to fact check. That's such an important part of this. Okay? First of all, we learned about carbohydrates yesterday, and I know that this apple is an example of carbohydrates. Okay? Because apples are made up of glucose. Can you guys help me with that chemical formula for glucose?
Glue plus O.
Oh, that's photosynthesis. I just need to know about glucose.
4 plus 2.
Now, that's really cool though because you guys made that connection to photosynthesis. Didn't even know, but you made that connection. So do you think that this would be an appropriate area for me to draw a line and say the photosynthesis equation?
Yeah. Because of her breathing.
Right?
Yeah.
This glucose came from photosynthesis.
Oh, shoot.
That's where that glucose came from. It's important for you to make that connection. Okay? So as you're fact checking my mind map, please add to yours so that you can make sure to have these facts on your mind map the next time we practice. Okay? Now, we also learned a little bit about some, what example might this one fall under?
Today,
Say that a little louder, Michael. Protein,
yeah.
right? We learned about protein also. That's another food item I could choose to eat. I chose to write a steak. You could have put something else,
Peanuts.
right?
They got protein.
We also learned about one other food group, one other biological molecule. What's that
Dairy.
last one?
Dairy. Oh, that. Butter is made out of dairy, I thought.
It is, but it's pure fat from the dairy. It's basically strained fat from the milk.
Oh, okay.
Interesting thought, huh?
Yeah.
So we've learned about these 3 things, and we've added these to our mind map about food. Okay? Make sure that this is a part of your mind map. Now, also, just to be thinking about, we talked about photosynthesis. What's the opposite of photosynthesis? Tell your shoulder partner, what's the opposite of photosynthesis? I heard a lot of mumbles of. Would we all agree with a thumbs up that cellular respiration is the opposite of photosynthesis? Let me see those thumbs, please. All right. So, in cellular respiration, what do we breathe out?
Air.
Carbon dioxide, right? That's what we breathe out. So if this is not on your mind map, please add that. Again, ladies and gentlemen, I'm only showing you a take into mine in case you are having trouble creating your own. I actually saw quite a few years that already looked somewhat like this, so that's pretty cool, okay? Not saying that this is right, it's just one way to look at this concept. Now again, when we practice our mind maps, again, I see you guys tomorrow. When we practice them tomorrow, I expect that these things should be in there. Okay? These are the key concepts we're needing to get. Again, why do we do a mind map instead of just doing bullet points? Share with your shoulder partner what you think. Why do we maybe do mind maps instead of just making a list?
Yeah, it's just like that's like
All out.
Okay,
Da
so
Vinci or
let's wrap up those conversations in
except it's
2.
not. She's not as good as Da Vinci.
1.
She's like horrible compared to Da Vinci.
Thank you guys so much for having that conversation.
More like
I heard as I was kind of just walking back and forth that I heard a lot of people said, it gives my mind something to remember, right? So for example, it's a lot easier for you to remember the picture of the carbon cycle than it is just to list out points about the carbon cycle, right? It's going to be a lot easier for you to remember all these things about how nutrition affects our body if you've got a picture that your mind can attach that to, okay? Everybody's picture might look different though. That's okay, got a question for you guys. Is it okay with you, really quickly? I forgot to tell you this yesterday. I had a really crazy experience in Lawrence this weekend. Would you guys be comfortable with me sharing that with you?
Oh, shoot.
Yeah.
Does it involve clowns with knives or something?
Okay, no, it doesn't. It doesn't. But let me just share this with you because I think if we can just put our pencils down, and I know that this is totally selfish of me, but I'd really appreciate just full undivided attention on my story here because I'm telling you what, this is just wild.
Wow.
So on Friday night, you guys happen to know, well, she's a sophomore chemistry teacher here. Her name is Mrs. Haig.
Yeah.
So Mrs. Haig and I, we decided we wanted to go out and get some dinner. So we went down to Mass Street. And when we got to Mass Street, I guess I'll attribute this to maybe either Massachusetts Street. It's like downtown Lawrence, right? You guys kind of familiar? Like Lawrence is weird, but that's why I love it because it's so strange and awesome. Okay. So I get out of the car with Mrs. Haig, and I the very first thing I see, I'm like, what in the world? There are these kids about your age dressed up in a costume. They're dressed up as purple eggs.
What?
Right? And I'm like, what? So I get, again, do I attribute this to Lawrence or Halloween? I don't know. Is anyone in here a dancer?
I'm
A little bit. Can anyone show me what a pirouette is?
I know it. Do you want me to show you?
Can you show me what it is?
No, you.
I would show.
Where you like do this?
There you go. See, the reason I'm not going to show you is because I go like this. Okay, so a pirouette. A pirouette is a dance move, and these purple eggs were doing that, but while they were doing it, they were shouting, "Amen, amen." And I was like, this is weird, right? And so I just, you know what, I'm like, all right, this is Lawrence, embrace it, whatever. Let's keep on walking. Let's go find something else. Let's keep walking down the street. We gotta get to our restaurant, right? We were going to a restaurant. We get down 1 block. We only moved 1 block. And we get to this guy. He's dressed as a black noodle.
Okay.
It looks like a noodle that he'd left on the stove for too long. And I was like,
You're probably part of the Black Lives Matter movement.
so anyway, he's got a football. And all of a sudden I hear him going, he goes, "Idina, go long." So Idina, he throws it, and then Idina's like, "Benedict, no!" And it hits her right in the face. I was like, what in the world? Her face literally was like smashed, and it turned orange. It was so bad. It was so bad. So hold on. Again, just to think about how weird this night is. I started off with purple eggs doing pirouettes, shouting "Amen, amen," right? What? Then I go down just 1 block, and I see a guy dressed up as a noodle that is like a black noodle, and he's throwing the ball to Idina, and she's yelling, "Benedict, no!" And she turns orange, right? So,
Did you take any pictures? Like,
oh, that's actually our trash.
No.
That's our trash. I got it.
y'all. That's
All right.
a trash can, man.
Yeah, we actually don't have any recycling at the moment. Thank you guys so much. Okay, so just to clarify again, I want to repeat that. We were with, I've got a couple of things I'm going to show you in just a minute, okay? So I was looking at this guy dressed up as Black Noodle. He was throwing it to Idina, his name, and he was like, "Benedict, no!" Right? So then we finally get to our restaurant. We went to Zen Zero. Awesome, right? Anyone ever been to Zen Zero?
No.
So good. So we get to our restaurant, and all of a sudden I look over, and the line is like out the door. Crud, I really don't want to wait for food. Not only that, but I get up to the line, and there's this lady that's dressed as a stick of butter. And this lady was dedicated, because I tell you what, she actually had oil on her costume, and the oil was dripping on the ground. Part of the reason why the line was so long was because this lady was standing in the front, and they weren't letting her in. And so she gets to the front and she goes, Dan, let me in, Zen 0. And he goes, Sue, no, you're not coming in here like that. You need to clean yourself up. So Dan gives her some paper towels, and he says, all right, clean yourself up, Sue. She starts wiping up the oil and stuff, but have you guys ever tried to clean up an oil mess with a paper towel?
Yeah.
What happens with a paper towel? It starts like clear, and it's ripping, it's just like all slimy, and it doesn't really work, right? So he's like, I'm sorry, Sue, you're gonna have to go home. Like, you can't come in. And Sue gets really mad. And she turns red. And she says, Dan, you let me in right now. And Dan was like, no, I can't. And it was like Sue and Dan and Sue and Dan. And it's like they were just going back and forth. And finally Dan was like, get out of here. Sue leaves, all mad. She's red. And then Dan yells to the back. He goes, hey, give me that new cleaning acid. So someone from the back comes out, gets some new cleaning acid, and cleans up the mess on the floor. So what? Over here I had Sue that was dressed up as a stick of butter with oil on her, and she turned, what happened to paper towels?
Clear.
It turned clear when she tried to clean herself up. And she also turned what color? Red. And then over here, it was Mr., what was his name?
Benedict.
And he was throwing to whom?
Idina.
Idina. Do you guys remember what color Benedict?
Benedict.
And when he threw to Idina, what happened to her face?
Orange.
Orange. And then we came over here, and what was in this corner over here?
Purple eggs.
Purple eggs doing what?
Spinning.
And they were shouting,
Amen.
amen, amen. Right? Okay, so ladies and gentlemen.
I still don't get it.
So, ladies and gentlemen, was this all really what happened to me on Friday?
No.
I brainwashed you? Okay, so, no, this was not what all actually happened on Friday night. Let me show you here. Please stick with me. Stick with me right here, okay? Oh,
Hold that. Oh.
okay. This first corner over here. Eggs are a source of
Protein.
protein. Eggs are a source of protein. And this source of protein, it happens whenever we do a test. Whenever I use a test called, get ready for it, wait for it, burette. Whenever I use an indicator called burette, eggs turn purple, or protein turns purple.
What?
Remember that word yesterday that we used, monomer? What's that word monomer mean? Tell your shoulder partner.
One.
Like a transformer.
Wrap up that conversation into one.
Yeah, that's what I said. One.
Hey, what's
No,
that,
no,
what's
I
that word
transformed
mean?
like that.
One.
One building block, right?
Yeah, we meant like the story.
Okay, hey guys, let's pause those side conversations, okay?
And then,
So, we have a monomer that makes up polymers, right? Now, poly meaning many, so that means many monomers. Oh, whoops. Sorry, guys. Polymer, thank you for pointing that out to me. And monomer. The monomer, or individual block of proteins, is called amino acids. Amen. Amen. So, let me summarize that for you again here. We have our source of protein is purple, eggs. We have our monomer is amino acids. And we know that our test for eggs is burette. Please take this opportunity to add that information about proteins to your mind map. I'll write down the test up here. The indicator is burette. Please add that information to your mind map. Yes, so, for example, if I had some crushed up eggs and I dropped some burette on it, then it would turn purple. This is actually what we are doing in lab tomorrow.
Would it still work? I'm sorry.
Yes, they
Would
do.
it still work if the eggs were cooked or?
Yes, because they still have some protein. Yeah. So, again, just to reemphasize, our monomer for proteins Our monomer for proteins are what? Our monomer for proteins. Amino acids, right? So when we're looking at proteins and the monomer is building itself up, we know that each individual monomer is an amino acid. And we have a ton of these amino acids that build up together to make proteins. Okay? So when you eat that big old hunk of steak, you can think of it as breaking it down into individual amino acids.
Dang, all right.
Okay? So next, make sure you've got that on your mind map. Make sure you have that on your mind map, please. Next, we talked about, what was his name? Mr.
Benedict.
And he was throwing to who?
Idina.
Idina. And what happened to Idina's face?
She died.
Turned orange. And Mr. Benedict was dressed in a black noodle. So we have two different types of carbohydrates. We have what's called simple carbs, and we have complex carbs. Okay? Simple carbs and complex carbs. Simple carbs turn orange in the presence of Benedict. An example of simple carbs is glucose. Glucose is a simple sugar. And in fact, that is also the monomer of carbohydrates.
So is that why macaroni noodles are yellow?
No. That's some crazy chemical crap it creates. So let me just clarify that again. The monomer of the carbohydrates, the individual building block, is glucose. If I were to take some glucose and stick some Benedict, drop some Benedict on it, it would turn orange. Okay? If I were to take glucose and drop Benedicts on it, it would turn orange.
So,
Okay. Again, this is what we are doing.
So at room temperature is Benedict like
It's a liquid.
a liquid at room?
Now, I told you there were two different types of carbs, right? Told you there was also a complex carb. Complex carbs are things like pasta,
Ooh, I love pasta.
breads, okay? Those kind of things, starchy things, are complex carbohydrates. Here's the cool part. Our individual building blocks, again, our monomers are still glucose. 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 All of these monomers build together until you get like a piece of, that's supposed to be a piece of bread. What?
Where?
Okay? So we've got all of these monomers of glucose that make up complex carbohydrates. But here's the deal. Since in this complex carbohydrate glucose is all bound up, we can't use Benedict's solution to test for it. Benedict's won't work because the glucose is all bound up. So instead we use
Arnold.
iodine.
Hey, isn't that stuff in salt?
Idina, iodine.
Isn't that thing in salt though?
What's iodized salt?
They do add iodine to salt sometimes. Yeah, you're right. So iodine will turn black in the presence of complex carbohydrates.
So that's why, that's why it's black noodles.
I know, that crazy night just happened to line up to my... All right. So those are carbohydrates. Those are the main parts of complex carbs. Hey, add this to your mind map, please. Make sure that this information makes its way onto your mind map. Make that connection, please. So again, I'm just going to summarize it for you really quickly. For simple carbohydrates, we use the indicator Benedict. The monomer, or what makes up simple carbohydrates, is glucose. For complex carbohydrates, the indicator is iodine. It will turn black in the presence of complex carbohydrates. Glucose is the building block for this. Okay? Please make sure that this finds its way onto your mind map. Switch it.
I know, but what if you
It wouldn't do anything. Nothing.
So is Benedict a liquid?
Benedict is a liquid. All of these things will be liquids, in which we are going to be dropping into test tubes of various foods. So again, while we're thinking about this, ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be our lab tomorrow. We are going to be testing milk, apple juice, oil, flour, and water for all of these macromolecules. So this story is going to come in very handy to you tomorrow. Let's just pause here for a second and think about why I told you this crazy story as opposed to just telling you this, right? Because you're going to be able to remember it, right?
Why that bug you?
So, this is the way that our minds work. This is how our minds work. Our brains work in this way. You can take something that's very simple, like purple eggs doing a pirouette, and you can attach something very complex to it to help your brain make that connection and remember. Okay? So, I'm going to be honest that even all the way through my master's program in biology, I made up stories like this. Okay? Now, it has to have meaning to you. That's why I had to make you guys buy into it, because at first you were like, this is really weird. And you really did buy into it and listen and think about it, right?
I knew.
So, all right, so ladies and gentlemen, we have another macromolecule to learn about. Remember, over in this corner here, notice also that I am very specific when I talk about each molecule. I stand where I told the story. Because this is yet another connection for your brain to make. So not only am I giving you a connection of the story, but I'm giving you a connection of a location in the room as well. Now, what's interesting is when we start talking about this, I can almost guarantee that a good 80% of you, whenever we talk about these macromolecules, you're going to be looking around the room from where I stood. Because that's how your brain connects things. Okay? So, the next one that we talked about, Miss Sue was dressed up as butter. Another term, so butter is a type of fat, right?
Yep.
Another term for a type of fat is also called lipids. What's it called?
Lipids.
Lipids. Now, lipids, they can be tested for using a brown paper bag. If you put, okay, think about it, guys. How many of you have been to Five Guys?
Go.
Right? It's good stuff. But you get that brown paper bag of French fries, and what's going on it? It's like saturated in fat. You can just see the grease leaking from it, and you're like, oh, get in my belly, right?
I just chipped the fries.
So it makes sense to us that lipids turn brown paper clear. We've seen that before in our fast food restaurants. The other activity, or the other test that we can do, is a test called, wait for it, Sudan. We can use the Sudan test, and lipids will turn red in the presence of Sudan. That's right, her face turned red when Sue was arguing with Dan. Sudan, right? So, the monomer for lipids are called fatty acids. What are they called?
Fatty acids.
Fatty acids. So again, the monomer for lipids, to make up lipids, are called fatty acids. So, when we look at these, we can see that there are two different types of fats. There is one called a saturated fat, and there is another that's called unsaturated fat. Just by like a nodding of your head, have you guys heard of that before?
Yeah.
saturated fat and unsaturated fat. So, when we look at these fatty acid tails, we see that they are made up of carbons and hydrogens, right? Notice this fatty acid tail is completely straight. That's the saturated one. The unsaturated fatty acid has a little bend to it. That's because of this bond here, it's got a double bond. So it curves.
So they broke
Here's the deal. At room temperature, saturated fat is going to be solid, like butter. But at room temperature, unsaturated fat is going to be like liquid, like oil. Okay?
Wait, doesn't butter melt at room temperature?
It melts not very often at room temperature. Not if you're having real butter. Now you might have, if you have like margarine, which is actually a scientifically created butter made from unsaturated fat like olive oil oftentimes, at room temperature it will melt. That's why margarine is so soft. Okay? So, those are the 3 macromolecules that make up our foods that we eat. Look, we've got one more. What did Dan yell for?
Towels.
He got towels and then he said, I need some
New acid.
the new cleaning acid. So the 4th molecule that we're going to talk about
Is the new?
is called nucleic acid. What's it called?
Nucleic acid.
So nucleic acids, we're actually not going to test for in our labs. Okay? The indicators can be dangerous, yes. No, most of the indicators are carcinogenic, which means they can cause cancer. So we don't want to do that.
Wait,
1 second, okay?
is it DNA?
I'll get right to you. Go ahead, finish that.
Deoxyribonucleic acid, isn't that DNA?
That's exactly right. That's perfect. So nucleic acid, the polymer of nucleic acids is DNA and RNA. The monomer are nucleotides. Okay, ladies and gentlemen. So, again, I told the story to hopefully help you have something to attach your memories to. Right now, we are going to take exactly 2 minutes for you to go through the story with your shoulder partner and describe what each part of the story dealt with. So, for example, if Jillian was my shoulder partner, what I would say is, Jillian, the very first corner was protein. Mrs. Roper represented that by eggs that turned purple in the presence of, that were purple and had the amen, amen. What that meant was, eggs show protein, protein turns purple in the presence of burette, and the monomer is amino acids. Here's the trick. You are going to try and do this without your notes first. Try and do this without your notes first. If you need to fact check, please go ahead and feel free to grab your notes, but try your best without it first. Are there any questions on the expectations for these next few minutes?
No.
Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, let's have that quick conversation. And I will put up a timer for 2 minutes. Okay?
Okay, so first one.
So I didn't write them down.
One piece.
But I had a perfect sport being to tell you about all this complex stuff, this super complex stuff I'm talking about. And I wanted to make sure that you had something easier to do. So can you just at least tell me what the good thing is,
Okay, we're in our last 13 seconds.
They picked her up because they caught her clear.
And please head back to your desk in 3 or 2, tension back up front. And 1. Okay, so you guys look at this. This is so stinking cool. Like, I can't get over how cool it is. That by the end of this week, you guys are gonna you're gonna have this stuff down. If you buy into this with me, and you really keep practicing this story, and you keep practicing your mind map, this stuff is gonna seem like second nature to you, and you guys, I mean, I know you're already geniuses, but you're gonna be able to talk about this and not only be geniuses, but truly look like geniuses. Okay? Because this stuff, I'm not gonna lie, this is a little bit challenging, yeah?
Very.
This is hard. Without the story, it would be, right? So now our brains have something simple to connect it to,
Thank you.
and to make that connection.
I would just made myself like the story.
Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, let's refocus now.
His face looked like a piece of bread.
Hey, just to make some connections here, we are not going to go into too much detail on this, but we do need to have an idea of what this stuff means. Now, atoms, they want to have how many electrons in their outer shell? 8, right? Carbon, 4? What did we decide about carbon through our last video? It's on your shoulder, partner. Our last video, what did we learn about carbon? Wrap up that conversation into
What does carbon do? It makes everything
1.
sticky.
Okay. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys for having that conversation. Let's go ahead and end them real quick, please. Now, I noticed a couple of you guys struggling, and when I went like this, right? Does that bring back an image for you from our video? A silly image, but it helps the connection, right? So, carbon wants to bind to everything, right? Carbon wants to bind to everything. And since it wants to bind to everything, it is the duct tape of life, and it's found in just about everything. Now, here's an example of carbon sharing electrons with 4 hydrogen molecules. If we remember, hydrogen only has 1 electron, and so carbon can share with 4 hydrogen molecules because that fills its octet rule. That makes it have 8. This is called a covalent bond. What kind of bond? Covalent bond. That is when they share electrons.
I talk about this sometimes. I forget what it was. But I learned this in independent study.
Now here's where we're going to get this stuff applying to the food we are learning. Here's where we are going to apply this to the food we are learning about.
And he wearing a Rolex watch with a Gucci belt.
Okay,
he
so
he got some Nike stuff. Right? They ain't even out yet.
So, our glucose molecule, please notice,
Remember, what's our chemical formula for glucose?
Why is this next?
Okay. Notice there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 carbons. C6. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 hydrogens. H12. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 oxygens. O6. When I'm showing these lines,
I'm showing that the electrons are being shared between those carbon molecules. Okay? I'm not going to get into the details about why this chain can wrap up around and become a ring like this, but know that carbon or glucose can also be represented as a ring structure like so. It's the same structure, it's just also a ring.
Look at that.
Okay? Alright. Now, I also wanted to, whoopsie daisy. What just happened?
Hours. Take as much time as you
okay, so ladies and gentlemen, while I get this sorted out really quickly, please talk to your shoulder part. Actually, no, we need to get up. We've got a couple minutes left. You've been sitting for a little while. We're going to listen quickly. We're going to pair with a same number from a different group. So hold up your numbers, find yourself a partner, and share with them 3 new things that you have learned today. 3 new things that you have learned today. Ready? Go.
Alright, so what are 3 things you learned? Nothing. I learned nothing. Good job, nice time. Yep.
Oh, you guys just talking.
What do you think?
Okay, ladies and gentlemen. Wrap up those conversations in 20 seconds, please.
Can't even be here. This is the spot of a school. That's my purpose.
And in 5 seconds, we should all be back to our desks.
Someone would let me pull
And let's get my screen working again, shall we? One would hope.
How does
Okay, so as just a quick review, we have learned so much today, and I want to make sure that we all understand each concept. So, we have 5 minutes left of class to finish our quick review. This is going to be reviewing our story. We learned about proteins. Proteins turn purple in the presence of Burette. Proteins turn purple in the presence of what? Burette. Their monomer is amino acids. Okay? As a review, I talked about purple eggs doing a pirouette, shouting amen, amen, right here.
Hey, that look like Chick-fil-A sign.
One more, sorry, MJ. We then spoke about simple carbohydrates. Simple carbohydrates are things like sugar. They turn orange in the presence of what indicator? Benedicts. And ladies and gentlemen, what is the monomer for simple carbohydrates? Glucose.
No.
So this word monosaccharide
Let's talk about what this means really quickly. Mono
Means
means what?
glucose.
One. Saccharide means sugar. One sugar. One glucose. Okay? So again, it turns orange in the presence of what?
Glucose.
Go ahead, MJ. The next one that we learned about are complex carbohydrates, also known as disaccharides and polysaccharides and all sorts of things. They turn what color? In the presence of, and their monomer is what? Glucose, also known as monosaccharide. Okay? MJ, one more. Yes. We then learned about lipids right here. And we can use what kind of test for lipids?
Brown paper bag.
A brown paper bag, right? And that brown paper bag, what will happen to it? Get clear, right? And its monomer is fatty acids. Now, hey guys, I want to talk to you about something really quickly. I think I've got like 30 seconds. Listen closely. Please don't pack up yet.
I'm already packed up.
This is a very complex topic that is going to leave your working memory very quickly. I encourage you tonight to practice your mind map. It'll take 5 minutes, then go back and fact check with your mind map from today. It won't take you long, but it will pay off huge in the end. Have a wonderful evening, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, I think so.
Can I come in tomorrow morning?
Absolutely, definitely.